Today on The Riff, Jeremy and Justin talk about death. What do we do with death? It's something we all have in common. And sometimes how you look at death is how you look at life. We hope today is helpful and hopeful. Thanks for listening.
All right. Okie dokie. Oh.
Did you just do that?
Static electricity.
So is it still recording?
I don't.
Man, why are you touching this stuff? It's like peeing on an electric fence, man.
Yeah, it's still going.
Is it still going?
Yeah, it's just
What are you doing? Ground yourself. Justin, you are grounded.
Ooh, that is buildup.
Oh, yeah. All right, we're going.
Don't touch anything, man.
I think we should just leave that intro.
Oh!
What are you doing? Quit
This is ridiculous. All right, we're a minute in. Go for it.
We're a minute in. Welcome to the episode of The Riff. If we have it my way, we're a minute in because we left this. We are here. If we're still alive, we don't know how this ends. We are here recording in the Dream Center. I don't know if you remember that cold snap we had, but this is when we're recording. It is single digits.
Yeah,
outside.
It's cold and it's also cold inside.
It is double digits. I don't know why you're whining.
Yeah, it's the double digits, but it is at a freezing mark. So the boiler is not working in this part of the building right now.
I don't know how much our listeners are familiar with boiler technology, but if it's anything, it would be more than we are familiar with boiler technology. The one person we know who's familiar with boiler technology is in Nicaragua on a mission trip right now. And so anyway, we're in a cold, frigid time, but that's all right. We're alert, we're awake, we're ready to go, and we will honor your time is my guess.
We will.
Without further ado, let's dive right into another episode of The Riff. Thanks so much for listening. Justin, it's not about us. It's not about how cold we are. It's not about how uncomfortable I am right now. What's our topic? Let's warm ourselves up with a nice warm topic. What are we talking about today?
A nice, warm, fuzzy topic of death.
Today we are talking about, like, for real though, what's your topic?
Oh, it's death.
Okay.
Yeah, it's death. We had a small conversation just on death, and there were a lot of conversations that got me thinking about death. Andy Thornton, our campus pastor,
who is alive
at the Dream Center.
Let's finish that really quick. This is not an announcement, my friends. Not an announcement.
Who is alive? But he is going through some chaplaincy training and programs, and he's dealing a lot with death.
Yeah, he's working with the hospital.
Yes.
And so every day he's going from room to room, dealing, really trying to minister to families who are going through trauma. And so many of them, he doesn't have a solution for them, does he?
No. So I've just had a conversation with him that was just very interesting to me. Yeah. Because he was just talking about how people handle death in so many different ways, right? And how he's just able to get an front row,
or up front. Either way, but I would probably pick one. So
both of them.
It's like
view.
Like combining apple pie and lasagna. Like, I like them both, but pick one.
He's just getting a clear picture of what death is to people, how it impacts people, how it impacts families. And it's just so fascinating how broad it is. Yeah. So where... Yeah, I thought this conversation with you, especially from a spiritual point of view that you have, I think would be helpful. And for viewers that have probably, I guess, listeners.
No,
do we have more listeners and viewers? I always think people are just watching it, But I don't watch it. I've never watched it.
You've never watched it?
No.
Oh. No. I've got it. I always watch it.
Do you?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that a lot of listeners and viewers have walked through death in some way, right?
Undoubtedly, all of them.
Yes.
And some probably right now. And so, again, we understand it's a sensitive topic, and in the moment, it can feel very weighty. And so we do want to respect the fact that some of you might be going through a sense of loss right now, or just coming off of it. And so as we walk through this, we understand that. We want to walk through maybe some handles that we also realize maybe today's not the day you're ready for a handle for that. But I do think it'd be helpful to talk about that?
Definitely. So there's just quite a few different viewpoints out there when it comes to death, especially when you get inside of a Christian circle of what that is and what it looks like. So I just kind of want to pick it apart. I want to see what's helpful, what's not helpful, and then we'll go from there. That's
awesome.
it. That's the conversation.
Okay. Well, interesting thing that I saw last week on some Instagram reel. And, I got caught in that rabbit hole of you just go to, I don't know, it's the search. So it's not the people you follow. It's just interesting reels that keep coming up. And there was one that looked interesting. It was a guy who was buried alive in a casket, but he had air. He had an air supply, but he was supposed to be left there for 2 weeks. And he did this voluntarily, and a young guy, and it was a pretty big deal. They were shooting this, and they covered him up, and he had an ability to tap out if he needed to. So, but I'm thinking, man, who would go through this exercise? For him, it's probably for some promotion, for followers, and all these kind of things. But just that thought of this exercise of I want to think now while I'm alive what it might be like when I'm dead. And we don't have a whole lot of historical evidence of people who have been on the other side and have come back. Now, that's why Easter's a pretty big deal. And anytime even someone hints that they were dead and they came back, we quickly give them a movie. Like we don't even, credibility, it doesn't matter. Why? Because as society, we want to know what is it like on the other side. And famous books, famous movies over the years have been people who spent 7 minutes in hell or 9 minutes in heaven or this waiting room negotiation with God. And we're fascinated because we have no clue. So anyway, so I'm curious about the topic. Walk us through. You've been walking through this topic. What interests you about it?
I think it's an interesting piece to me because I think there's so many different angles of it.
Okay.
Right. And I think that the way that you look at death impacts the way that you look at life. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So I grew up in an Episcopalian background, and I had a pretty hardcore tragedy happened to me when I was in high school, end of high school. Yeah. And I remember sitting with the Episcopalian priest, me and my dad, asking why, right? And I feel like the answer that he gave me is still why I am in the Jesus narrative.
Okay.
And it was an answer that didn't have certainty to it, but it still had certainty to it. Meaning, his answer to why did this happen was honestly, I don't know. I don't know. And then he said, I can give you a lot of theological explanations. I can give you a lot of theory. I can give you a lot of belief. I can give you a lot of stuff. But what I can't give you is an answer to why it happened. What I can give you an answer to is through Scripture, we see that Jesus is with us.
Yeah.
I can give you that answer. And I don't know, but I know he's here.
Yeah.
Do you feel it? Right? And there's that conversation. My dad reacted in a different way. He wanted certainty. He wanted to know, right? And walked away. We never went to church again as a family. And then I started going back to church, I don't know, like late college. And it was forever until my mom and dad came back, and they've come to North Point from time to time, right? But there was still, it's just interesting to see how that answer impacted both of us in completely different ways, right? Of like, how do you look at death, right? And right now, the past 6-7 months, I've been wrestling with it of just like, man, what is death to me? Just knowing, I don't know. And I don't know if it's like because I'm getting older and I feel like I'm getting older and an age that it's like coming on. But it's definitely been a situation to where I want to look at what does death mean to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a great journey and fascinating thought process.
Yeah.
So for you, what does that look like? Just kind of growing up, getting into being a pastor. You deal with death.
Yeah.
You walk through funerals. You walk through families. You see grieving. And we talked about a couple of these. We did a podcast called Balloons and Flowers, Flowers and Balloons, Balloons and Flowers on grieving and death. Not really death necessarily specifically, but you talked a lot about the grieving process, right? And you've been able to watch that and look at that. So as a pastor, like what have you seen death be to people?
Yeah. I would say that is a very meaningful part of the role. pastoring, and very similar to what Andy's walking through, even in the chaplaincy portion of what he's doing, because there's nothing that could divide a family. There's nothing that could unite a family more than the assurance that we're not sure, right? When someone we love loses and we realize there's nothing we can do about it. To be able to minister to someone during that time is meaningful. It's interesting, as you walk through your family experience, I think it's very similar to most of our family's experience in that, what are we looking for when we come to theology? Are we looking for the certainty to be able to dismiss something that's uncomfortable? Are we looking for the handles to dive into something that's very uncomfortable? And the truth is, you can find either in a church. And it's probably very typical for a lot of, if you grew up going to church, it's probably typical in a lot of denominations to be able to have a platitude or a view of theology that gives you certainty so that we can say, hey, I don't need to feel bad. And we say things like this: they're in a better place. And I don't like that. Because I almost feel like you're robbing grief of its purpose. Grief is this feeling that allows me to offer the gift of sadness. And when I'm robbed of that by feeling like grief is bad, grief isn't God, grief isn't good, God gave me this sense of sadness. And when I'm able to offer it in grief, I'm honoring the person that I lost. I got to acknowledge I've lost someone that means so much to me. And for me to dismiss it, to get sometimes what we try and do is, if I can get you quickly past your emotions, then that's spiritual. Other things like, I don't know why the Lord took them, or heaven gained another angel. These are sayings that I feel like I get it, and I'm not trying to judge people when they do that. But I feel like it's terrible theology. I just do not believe that. One, I do not believe we become angels. So I never believe that God needed another angel. I don't believe that God said, you know what? I think I would like this accident to happen in this way because I want them right now. I just don't see that in Scripture. And that doesn't say that God's not sovereign and powerful. I just believe, why do planes crash? Is it because God was being sloppy? I mean, he's not the one that created the planes. So we created a way to be able to go 370 miles an hour, and then we're like, "Why, God? Why did someone die when it broke down?" So all these things is, I just theologically don't like these platitudes. It says in Ecclesiastes. Here's one thing it says that I like to share at funerals. It says, "Better to be at a funeral than at a party," and I've never seen that tattooed on anybody's neck, and but I think that's a deep, deep verse that the ancient writer, says it's more beneficial for you to sit in grief. In a funeral back in those days, they were talking this is a BC world. A grief period would last for a week to 10 days. Better to be sitting in your grief than throwing back wine. Because when you're throwing back wine, you're dismissing what you feel. When you're sitting in your grief, you're experiencing what God can teach you through these things. Not that he created this to teach you, but he's going to be with you. So I feel like this idea of remembering your death actually gives life a lot more fullness. I just don't ever want to be so quick to assure us that, about what we want heaven to look like, we want heaven to be like, for us to miss the beauty that remembering someone could be.
I have two questions. One, even though you don't believe it, do you feel that I would make a really good angel? Look at my smile. Look at my smile.
I've thought about that a lot.
Yeah,
specifically Valentine's Day. When I see the depictions of Cupid, I'm like, I think they're off. I think you in a big old diaper. My goodness.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah.
A second question would be, what's your take on? There's a lot of Christian thought out there that's very popular that talks about overcoming death. Right, Jesus overcame the grave, and death, where is your sting, and all of these types of things that we do celebrate in the Easter, tradition. What is your thought on that? Is there more to that? Because my thought is like, when anybody talks about like the miracle of Lazarus, right? Like, he died again.
He did.
So I'm like, well, I don't know if we're like fully seeing the whole picture, and we're just like celebrating when. I don't know. What's your thought? What's your thought on that line of thought and this whole idea of we made it through this life, almost an escapism, really. We made it, we got it. Jesus, he defeated death, and now we get to live forever for him once we die. Hallelujah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with it. John chapter 11 is talking about the Lazarus account, and Jesus is quoted as saying, "I am the resurrection and the life. If you believe in me, even though you are dead, yet shall you live." And so when he raised Lazarus, the temperature gives me a lisp sometimes, Lazarus to life, he does this as a statement, not that the statement is Lazarus is going to be, he's going to be immortal, but that Jesus does have power over death, hell, and the grave. And that was something that was prophesied, that the Son of Man would have that. And so then when he rises from the dead and gives us life, he never said we won't die. He just said we'll live again. So I do believe in a resurrection, a literal resurrection from the dead. I do believe in an eternity with Jesus. I do believe a place that he has prepared for us, that where he is, we may be also. And so, that's something. I hate the word escapism because I don't like the thought that maybe I would be attached to it, because I don't. But if that's the definition of escapism, I'm an escapee. But what I think is, where I would say is mishandled, is when we dismiss the pain that we're going to have, we dismiss the incredible loss that we experience, and we dismiss the utter groanings of the world that this is not right. I believe then what happens is we miss our ability to be Jesus with people when they mourn, miss our ability to even receive Jesus when I mourn. And that's a big part of it, is to have, it says, Paul's talking about it and says that we need to share in the fellowship of his suffering to experience his resurrection as well. And so I believe there's both. I believe if we say, hey, there is no resurrection, that's a parallel, it's a metaphor, then I believe, I just think there's too many scriptures that talk about that, I would feel like then this is all we got. I also believe if it's one day we're going to have true life and that will be the kingdom of heaven, we miss out on our very purpose. I believe it is this blending of both.
And I would think that that's why I would not consider you an escapee.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you are blending those pieces, right?
Yep.
I think when I think of somebody that's in an escapism type of mindset, it is strictly a linear thinking, A, B, before, after.
Yeah.
Right? Where you look at Jesus and he's like, the kingdom of heaven is near. It's here. It's now. Yeah. Right? Like the Lord's prayer is to bring heaven to earth.
Right now.
Now.
Yeah.
Not then, not after it. And why it's able to be now, he'll overcome the grave.
Yes,
he's overcome it, right? Like there's no barrier, and I think that's the hard part for me to put into my brain. Reading like Ronald Rolheiser or Richard Rohr or these names, that if you're from a conservative background, just don't read it. It will probably you will be mad more than learn. But they talk a lot about that of of so many times we miss the gift that death is. Right. Now, and I understand that is a heavy and loaded term there as well. Like, I don't know if I could ever talk about that to someone who has lost like a Lily or an Ella, right? My kids. Like
you experience it, not express it.
Right, absolutely, right? So it's very important how you use your words and what you're doing inside of grief, but the understanding that like it's coming for all of us. Right? But there is this sting that's been taken out of it, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're able to look at death and understand death while you're living.
Yeah. Historically, there's been cultures that have really made that a balancing vibe. And you were telling me a little bit about that.
All through Stoic philosophy, which was a very popular brand of philosophy even when Paul was going around, right? Like he's talking to a lot of Stoics when he says, hey, you got an unnamed idol here. Let me tell you their name.
I see you're very spiritual.
I see, right? Like there's actually a lot of things that you're doing. Let me give it a name for you, right? But in the Roman culture, right, you would have emperors or you'd have war heroes that would travel through the cities of Italy and Rome and all of these spaces, and they would always have a philosopher in their ear right behind them, right, as cheers are chanting their name, and Memento Mori is what they would whisper, right, over and over into the ear of the victor. And all that is remember death, right?
Memento Mori.
Memento Mori.
Remember death.
Remember death. Every day, remember it, right? Because number one, it's going to keep your ego in check. Understanding that like, this will end, right? This whatever it is, but also in a space of like, live, like remember death. Like this right here is life. Like drink it in, right? Drink it in, enjoy it because it is coming, right? And hopefully at the end of my life, like I said, I've been walking through this for the past 6 months, like in depth for some reason of like, at the end, I want to be able to open my hands and like give my life away. Because in my brain, I'm like, how awesome would it be of a gift to my kids if at the end of my life, we're all still here, right? And nothing tragic happens, but to where it can be a celebration and to where I can give my life freely and we can celebrate what it's been, right? And I know that's like probably very happy clappy thinking, but I want to live in a way that death doesn't have a sting. Right. So in my mind, I'm like, I get the whole theology of like Jesus took away this and defeated this. And I also agree in that. I think there's a deeper meaning to it as well of like, he's taking away death now. Like not just then, but now as well. And that doesn't mean not to grieve. That doesn't mean not to be sad, but live in the sadness and live in the grief. So with that understanding and that thought process, like, what do you say, right? Especially as we talk about being careful with our words. What do you say to someone who has lost or is in the process of losing?
Well, let me share a story. This morning as I'm coming in here, I've a group of friends that were on this text thread, and one of them lost their mom and shared that last night. And so it's interesting, that's what we're talking about today. And so he shared that with us as I'm driving in today and said, man, I lost my mom and I just want to tell you guys this. And I'm hurting. And even though I knew it was coming, in the setting. And one of my friends replied with a way that was beautiful. It was Wes Davis. And I talk about Wes a lot. He's a mentor in my life. He says to this friend, said, Troy, I just, man, we hurt with you. He goes, are there some photos of you and your mom that are meaningful to you that you would be able to share with us? I'd love to hear those stories. And so then this morning, Troy is sharing these beautiful pictures of him and his mom. And then texting just quick, hey, here's when we were doing this. My mom would always bring me a snack as an adult pastor, bring me a snack to my office because she always wanted to make sure I was eating. And, so it was just this really cool time where I'm sure Troy is crying and scrolling through his phone. And I'm like, that's so Wes. It's so like, I'm like, man, that was a very meaningful response to someone to say, not to be like, well, we know she's in a better place, but to be able to say, can you share some of this memory? Can we join with you in this gift of remembrance? Let them celebrate this gift of loss. and ride that train with them. So I think that's a great example to be able to say to someone, man, I hurt with you. I hurt with you. When you're could you share something with me? That's just powerful. I think it's important for us all to live life backwards, to know that, and this is true when we're at a funeral, as you'll always see flowers. I like to remind people, who knows, but the flowers for our funeral might be in bloom today. We have no idea. And if I understand that, and I love what you say, to be able to say, death, there's no more staying, what a gift it would be to your family. And I want to have that mentality that when I die, I don't want to be like, I don't want anyone cry at my funeral. I want them to cry like crazy because I want them to be like, we are going to miss him so much. We can't even imagine today how we're even going to get through it because boy, did we love him. Now, at the same time, he was ready. He understood the purpose of this. And I'm sure he probably is in a better place. And we're all going to eat Waffle House as soon as we're done with this. But boy, I want you to be aware of your loss, right? I want them to be able to have strong emotions of their loss, but celebration of their time. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I tease with it, but I think that's an appropriate grief, to be able to say, man, we know this is part of the deal. We know that this is what we're all headed to. And I personally hate the fact that I don't have another opportunity to hang. That's what I want to feel when I'm at a funeral. At the same time, man, I cherish the gift of these memories. And God, I pray that you would help me to share even more of them. And as the years pass, some of these memories might dull. So what can I do to still honor the memory? And that's why I've already ordered, and don't tell Leanne a surprise, I've already paid for it, BJS trophy, a big old statue. And I just feel it's just a little tokens like that that'll help her, right? Not forget me. So
let's back up. Did you just call it BJS?
Because
I think it's BJ's.
I don't think so. Is there an apostrophe in it?
I think there's an apostrophe there.
Okay, there's a lot of reasons why I call it that, but BJS trophy, I don't think there's an apostrophe.
If BJ's listening, I'd love for him to call in. Now, we don't have a number, but I want an answer to this one.
Yeah. No, okay. As a matter of fact, I think that's probably a good landing spot. Right? As a matter of fact, can we make a wager? Can we make a wager on air here?
Of course.
Okay. If it is BJ apostrophe S trophy, which some people would say BJ's.
Okay.
I would think you're right. I'm wrong.
Okay.
And I would say I'm willing to go to BJ's and buy you a trophy, a plaque that says, you're right, I'm wrong, comma, unquote, Dr. J.
Wow.
Yeah. But if it is BJS, no apostrophe, and it's not properly called BJ's, but it's BJS trophies, then I want a box of Cheez-Its. And none of this cheddar jack business.
No, I know.
I'm a purist.
I know. No,
deal?
over-toasted.
Okay, so here's what we need you to do. Prove it. Our listeners, if you're still listeing, send us an email with your next topical question to, where do they send that to?
Just Justin G at
Justin G at northpointchurch.tv.
Just send it there. We've tried
BJ apostrophe S at thereisnoapostrophe.com. Let us know the answer, and we'll catch you on the flippy flap.
I love
Justin,
it.
Good topic.
Good talk.
Memento
Mori, man.
Now.
Yeah, Memento Mori.
Memento Mori to you and yours as well. You should work for Hallmark. Thank you. All right, see y'all.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.